Later this month, the anticipated Special Joint Committee will be issuing its recommendations. The Special Joint Committee was set up for us to get recommendations on dealing with our economic problems and our budget deficit. I just want to share with my colleagues 2 points that I think are critically important that I hope will come out of this Special Joint Committee. First, I hope this Joint Committee will provide the way that we can advance an agenda that will create jobs in our community. And secondly, I hope that this Special Joint Committee will come forward with a comprehensive and balanced approach for us to deal with our unsustainable budget deficits that we currently have. So let me talk about the first issue, creating jobs. President Obama came forward with a job initiative that I really do believe is entitled to debate on the floor of this body, and I would hope passage. President Obama brought forward a bill that deals with rebuilding America so that we can have the types of roads and bridges and water infrastructure and energy infrastructure that allows America to compete, at the same time creating jobs. He's offered proposals that will help small businesses because we know that the small businesses represent the economic engine of America, where more jobs will be created, where more innovation occurs. He understands that and is encouraging us to do more to help small businesses. The President's proposal deals with our men and women in the military service who are coming back from Iraq and coming back from Afghanistan to have jobs available. Mr. President, yesterday I was at BWI Airport as our returning soldiers came back from being in Iraq and Afghanistan. And they want jobs. And the President's initiative says, look, let's make sure that we have jobs for our returning soldiers. All that means that we're going to create more jobs. And the Joint Committee needs to make sure that in its recommendations that we have the wherewithal to move this nation forward by creating jobs. The President's proposal has been evaluated by independent economists. Mark Zandi, who was Senator McCain's economic advisor in his presidential campaign, points out that the President's proposal would increase our gross domestic product by 2% and create 1.9 million additional jobs. And the President's proposal was completely paid for, so it adds nothing to the deficit. Now, I must tell you, if we're going to be able to balance our budget, if we're going to be able to get our budget into better shape, we have to have more jobs. Less people using governmental services, more people paying revenues or taxes into our system. The more people that are working, the better our budgets will come into balance. Now, I know some here are saying, look, there's a better way of doing it. Well, come forward with a better way of doing it. I would challenge particularly my Republican colleagues, if you have a better way, come forward with a proposal that creates at least 1.9 million jobs and does it without adding to the budget deficit. That's the proposal that we had before us. I'm asking the Joint Committee to make sure that they provide in their recommendations a way that we can create jobs so that we can deal with our budget deficit. The second point I want to make is that I would hope that the Joint Committee's recommendations would be comprehensive and balanced. Some call that the shared sacrifice. Now, I know these numbers can sort of be used any way you want to, but the groups that have looked at this, the Simpson-Bowles group and others, say, look, we need to reduce the deficit over the next 10 years by about $4 trillion. I think that's a number that we should meet. I would hope the Joint Committee would come in with the $4 trillion of deficit reduction over the next 10 years. We've already done the first trillion. We did that when we raised the debt limit in August. Now we need to look at another $3 trillion. I would hope that they would do it. It starts with a realistic baseline. What does that mean? It means what numbers are we using in order to determine whether we actually get to that $4 trillion of deficit reduction? What baseline do we use in order to determine the revenue base in which we start these discussions? And I would suggest we need a realistic baseline. And I was impressed by the work of the Simpson-Bowles Commission. I was impressed by the work of our colleagues in the Senate, the so-called Gang of Six, in which I must tell you the overwhelming majority of the colleagues in the Senate have at least agreed to the basis of what the Gang of Six were working, what they're trying to do. It uses a realistic baseline, so it assumes that some of the tax provisions will be extended, but not all. It also assumes that we have to bring in additional revenues beyond that. Now, quite frankly, the number that we've been talking about is that we need about $1.2 trillion out of this $4 trillion package in realistic revenues using a realistic baseline. And that can be gotten. That's not so difficult to get. When you realize that all of the tax deductions, exemptions, and credits equal as much revenue as we bring in our tax code. Another way to say that is if we eliminate all the exemptions, the deductions, and credits, we could have tax rates 1/2 of what our current tax rates are. Now, what we're suggesting is that there are certain loopholes that are in the tax code that benefit special interest corporations. They need to be eliminated. They need to be eliminated. And everyone has to pay their fair share. We can't just attack the middle-class families. There was an article in the Baltimore Sun this past week that showed that during this recession, the number of people earning more than $1 million has grown dramatically. And there have been economic studies that have shown that the wealthiest in America during these economic times have done very, very well. Their incomes have grown at a faster rate than other Americans, the middle-class families. Middle-class families are falling behind. So all we're suggesting is that when we look at how we get the revenue, let's make sure it's fair and we don't, again, penalize the middle-class families. Let's make sure those who earn over $1 million pay their fair share towards this comprehensive and balanced approach. And that's what we're asking the Joint Committee to come in with. Come in with proposals that are fair or balanced. Make sure everybody pays their fair share, including those who have done extremely well during this economic recession, those who have made over $1 million of income. I must tell you, everyone needs to be part of the equation. We understand that. We have to have what's so-called shared sacrifice. I've taken the floor before to talk about our federal employees, and everybody say, well, you know, the federal employees have to help contribute to this deficit also. Well, our federal employees understand that. They've already contributed. They were the first to do that. 2 years of pay freezes. And I might tell you, we're asking them to do more with less people. We've cut their budgets, and we've given them more work, and we've told them 2 years with a pay freeze. To me, our federal employees have already contributed to the deficit reduction numbers, and they shouldn't be picked on again. Mr. President, I believe we can come together, and we need to have a comprehensive and balanced approach that allows America to be able to create more jobs. That's what we need to do as a nation. If we come together, I am convinced that it will instill confidence among the American consumers, among American investors, and our economy will take off. And it's going to be good for everyone in this nation. I hope that this month we will see the Joint Committee come in with such recommendations that will be balanced, will be fair, and will allow us to create more jobs for Americans.